facts are insane.
Really?
But these are just a few of the strange things that go on in Korea. In today's video, we will be looking at the most bizarre facts about North Korea. So join us as we go through some of the craziest things that will send shivers down your spine and make you grateful that you weren't born there. Number 1, the traffic ladies of North Korea. The position is so elite that the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, picks the ladies out himself. The ladies stand at the intersections dressed in crisp military uniforms of blue and white shades. They are mostly seen in the capital of the country, Pyongyang, the only city rich enough to host cars and have bustling traffic. They are popular to the point that they have their own fan pages. They are highly desired, but also respected in society. It is mostly because of the benefits that the position brings along. Their perks include free housing, free medical care, and a much better compensation than the average North Korean. If that is the case in a country like North Korea, you can imagine the queues lining up to become a traffic officer, but the position doesn't come as easy as you'd think. You need to meet a lot of conditions to ultimately call yourself a traffic lady. Even then, there are chances you won't get picked to be in the city's most respected gentry. A couple of key things are that you must be single and must not be over the age of 26. If you cross these conditions at any time during your tenure, you're relieved of your duties immediately. After school, the girls start their training to hopefully join the most distinguished part of society. At just the ample age of 17, formal training begins. Number 2, the abandoned village. There is a thin strip of land between North and South Korea. It acts as a buffer between the two states, but while one is considered a happy place with a peaceful atmosphere, the same cannot be said about the other side. On South Korea's side of the DMZ, a village was built by the South Korean government. There are only 226 people living there, but they have the best of opportunities. They get to enjoy a smaller limit on taxes, free lands for farming, permission to free themselves of compulsory military service, a great schooling system, and large household incomes. South Korea is known to help the thousands of people living in North Korea. They take up to 1,000 people yearly and give them free citizenship. They get access to all the rights they were denied but their own government. So the concept of the happy village on the South Korean side was done to help the North Koreans realize that they are living on the wrong side of the border. North Korea picked up on the move and did something terrible with its share of the land. They replicated the idea from the South Koreans and designed a whole village with different amenities. There are many things built from scratch in the village, like houses, schools, daycare, and even a hospital. But the whole village is just a facade. Nobody lives there, and not a single soul is allowed to visit. The entire village is just an empty shell with a beautiful display. But the effort to make it look nice is a serious responsibility taken by the authorities. Sweepers come in regularly to make it appear good, but only from the outside. There have been no other reports of any human activity inside the compound. There have been multiple reports about power going on and off, but speculations were made that it is all part of the performance. The power is handled by an automatic switch that turns the light on and off. It is only there to fool the people on the other side of the border. The messed up thing is that the abandoned village of North Korea is bigger than the village of South Korea. This was purposefully done to block the view of the prosperous village on the South Korean side of the border. No one would dare to escape North Korea if they do not know what was going on at the other end. Number 3, the troubling social classes of North Korea. The scary fact is that these statuses define your worth and salary in society. The idea was to get a profile of the citizens of the state and know their origins. He believed that the people who were loyal to the government would have children who would stay loyal too. Basically, anyone who had a tainted family history where the older generation had shown disloyalty to the government would make their children suffer too. As a result of the massive investigation of family history, 3 social classes came into existence. The people who were considered loyal to the state were put into the core class. These people were considered the elite and got all the benefits and the best opportunities. They eventually became the politicians of the state, and most of the current leaders are also from the same class. Then came the wavering or the neutrals who are just living in the country with average opportunities. They cannot climb up a class, so they live in cities away from the capital, working in middle-class jobs. The last are the hostiles, which the government considers a real threat. Their family history shows a series of crimes against the state that denies them the right to live peacefully. Some of them are not allowed to work, while others cannot study for a better future. When the investigation ran nationwide, they were allocated to the most distant parts of the country, and the whole system came to be known. But recently, the concept of wealth has overcome the problem of social castes. Many people have started using bribes as a way to acquire jobs and better opportunities. It does not put them on the high end of the societal spectrum, but it gives them enough to live by in a decent environment. But these transactions run secretly and in fear because the government and the elite class still believe in the caste system. For any crime against the government, the consequences are as brutal as they can get. Number 4. The labor camps. It has produced for its own citizens. The prisoners that have miraculously escaped from these prison camps tell a horrifying tale that sends shivers down your spine. The scary thing is that these camps have been compared with Soviet Russia's Gulag camps and are often called out for dehumanizing the rights of its own citizens. It is estimated that around 16,000 labor camps are present in the country. They are situated in inaccessible locations, making it harder for the prisoners to escape the brutal conditions of the prison system. Mostly, they are in central and northeastern North Korea, on mountainous terrains with barbed wires to guard the escape routes. Authorities claim that you can expect 200,000 prisoners in the facility at any given time. But some of the camps are smaller and may host only up to 80,000 prisoners. The unlucky people who do find their way here may be of two types: political prisoners who are in lifelong detention, or average prisoners who did a petty crime and were thrown for lifelong imprisonment. But the terrifying thing is the fact that most prisoners do not even live to see the end of their sentences. Well, the conditions are so brutal in the camps that survival is rare. At the time of famine in North Korea, a lot of people were trying to migrate out of the country, but that did not sit well with the government, and they put the people they caught into prison camps. A few prisoners who did manage to escape the torturous and vile handling of prisoners reported unhinged behavior. Prisoners were starved to the point that they had to eat for earthworms, the brutal beatings over the smallest of offenses, and even forcing the detainees to watch public executions of their own family members. The scenes are horrific, and they are described only by a couple of prisoners. We can only imagine what other horrors go on inside these prison camps. Number 5, the 3-generation punishment stamp. This is one of the most frightening things that exists in North Korea. For a crime you did not even commit, you can get a death sentence or worse, a long sentence in the horrifying prison camps. Sometimes the crime is not even as big as the punishment, yet the 3 generations suffer incredibly from the consequences. In North Korea, the idea is that if you have committed a crime against the government, your children and your grandchildren will live their lives in the prison cell, completing the sentence for your crime. Similarly, if your grandfather has committed a crime, his sentence would befall you, and you will have to bear the consequences and the stain of being marked as a traitor to the state. So children as small as 5 years of age would see the likes of torture, beatings, and worse. It is more messed up than you can imagine. The astonishing thing is that the crimes against the government are not as brutal as the punishments of the crime. Anything could be considered as disloyalty to the state. If you try to learn about other cultures, you would be considered a traitor and be awarded a death sentence. If you try to leave the state, then you will be punished and tortured in the prison camps. It is one of the most hated crimes in North Korea and continues to bring terror to people who simply want to have a better life. But crimes as mundane as having a DVD of a Western movie were illegal. Army would raid villages in the middle of the night and take out the DVDs from the players just to check if they were from the Western cinema. Even showing a finger to the leader of the state can land you and your next 2 generations in prison camps. All of this is to instill fear into the citizens of the state. People would dare not try to go against the government if they knew about the conditions of the prison. There have been many countries that carried the collective punishment rule, but North Korea remains the only country still following the horrible law. Number 6. The unnecessary rules. There are rules for the way you live and how you live. If you do not live up to those rules, you could be seeing an immediate arrest or a lifelong sentence. The eyes are always on you. North Korea is home to a government that does not like the outside world. That is quite evident. It does not matter how big or small the crime you did. If it is not within the rules of the country and suggests that you have an affinity to countries besides North Korea, you are a traitor. Call them insecure, but if you go against those laws, you can face an arrest that is legal according to them. One rule is that you cannot listen to the outside music. Only those few tunes are allowed that are state-approved. The government believes that if the citizens listened to the conflicting lyrics of the popular pop culture, they would have disagreements and a rebellion would begin. Similarly, the famous Korean band K-pop is hated with a passion by the state. The government claimed that the Korean band was corrupting the youth of North Korea and decided to ban the band in the state. Another rule that is quite bizarre is that you cannot have haircuts that are not approved. Both men and women are only allowed to pick from 15 haircuts that have been approved by the government. Any experiment that you are hoping to have on your hair can lead you to a life in prison. But the rules further decline in nature for the women. The pre-approved hairstyles are only for married women. Unmarried women can only keep short hair and are strictly ordered to do so. One more bizarre rule is that you cannot wear clothes that are not approved by the state. You cannot wear blue jeans because the authorities believe that it is a symbol of the West. If you are a woman, you cannot wear obvious makeup or have your hair dyed. But the most shocking thing is that the country has a fashion police that goes to see which person is not obeying orders. Any foreign trends were forbidden, which led to a black market opening in the country that sold South Korean products in secret. However, the secrecy and the exchange of foreign products is only limited to the capital of North Korea. In the poorer cities, the idea is not that popular. It is easier for people to stay in line if they are wearing the same uniform. It does not make the other look different and would not cause a potential rebellion within the state. You might think the rules are strange, but the authorities know exactly what they are doing. Apart from these rules, there are a few others that will shock your mind. A person cannot buy a laptop without asking the authorities for permission. But the laptop does not offer much solace to the owner either, as there are only 28 websites to browse. The internet is extremely slow and is only available to a handful of citizens who are granted permission to have a laptop by the state. There are only 4 TV channels that the citizens can watch. Forget Netflix and other streaming channels. All that you can watch are the TV channels that sing about the political ideology of the state. Some of those channels show North Korean athletes, documentaries, and the history of sports in the country. But that is little comfort when you are surrounded by this many rules. Not all the rules apply to the government officials. They enjoy a full access internet along with many other perks that make you question the condition of the country. Number 7. Human feces, demanded to meet fertilizer needs. But there is one more thing that attacks the self-respect of the people living inside the country. While the elite class munches on the luxury, the poor citizens have to go through a terrible amount of ordeal to be allowed to live. North Korea is not home to a large agricultural land. Most of the country is either on top of the mountainous terrains or on its side. This means that the land available for farming is quite scarce, so the country had to rely on other countries to give aid. But things took a terrible turn when countries like the Soviet Union and South Korea pulled the plug on their aid. The government got creative and decided to open a program that called the farmers to submit human waste. Factories have a certain quota that they are required to fulfill because the state has demanded it from them. It is around a whopping 2 tons. Around 220 pounds of human waste was required from an able citizen in a day. The average limit of feces excreted from a healthy individual daily is around 3 to 8 ounces. Don't forget that the people living in North Korea are heavily malnourished, so to even get the required amount of human waste is a big and twisted problem. Some people claim that the highly unreasonable amount required from each individual is because the authorities could get heavy fines and bribes. The result was the public scurrying away for toilets and snatching each other's waste to fulfill their daily requirement. The scary thing is that the whole scenario is now considered a commodity. Number 8. the frightening public executions. Fear is an important weapon of the North Korean government. They do everything in their power to make sure that their citizens do not go out of line. And this punishment by the authorities is to ensure that fear stays floating in the atmosphere. Public executions are very common in the country. If you are not sent to prison camps, you could be looking at a death sentence that would be done in front of thousands of people. North Korea is home to a stadium with the world's largest capacity. It can host up to 150,000 people, but the things that it is used for are crazy. The stadium is not used to host just matches, at least not usually. Instead, it is more often home to public executions. Number 9. The North Korean calendar, and their bizarre calendar is the reason why. North Korea thinks that the Western calendar is too, well, Western, so they follow another calendar instead. The Yuche calendar began after the birth of the country's founder, Kim Il-sung, in 1912. Yeah, it was that recently. The first year that follows is Yuche 1 in the North Korean calendar, which reminds you of the stories of time travel. There are no years before the Juche years. So the two ways to refer to that time are either by saying before Jusha or simply using the Gregorian calendar. The Gregorian calendar was used in the country before the adoption of the Juche calendar. It was only after the death of Young that the country wanted to have their own calendar. So, on the third death anniversary of Young, the Juche calendar was adopted all over the country, in radio stations, schools, offices, on banknotes, and government institutions. It might be confusing to get the calendar right, but its uniqueness is what attracts tourists too. A lot of people buy the North Korean calendar as a souvenir when they are on a trip to a mysterious state. Plus, it is easy to remember what Juche year it is there. Simply get the difference between the present year and 1912, then add 1 in it. Voila! You will have the Juche year in front of you. In 2024, the Juche year would be 113 for North Korea. That's all of the terrifying things that only exist in the mysterious state of North Korea.